I want to throw this silly observation out. I just want you to think about it for the future. It's not something that exists right now for certain, but it's something that as a facilitator, I reflect on, in part because sometimes I use movies to use as imagery for folks to be able to visualize what does that look like kind of thing. There's a movie of mine that is a favorite that Ellen hates that well, it doesn't hate that I watch it, but I was surprised every time I watch it. It's one of those movies that comes on. When it does, I have to watch it. And I probably shouldn't because I've seen it probably 800 times. But it's a movie with my favorite worst actor, or one of my favorite worst actors, Kevin Costner. And it's a sports movie, and it's called Draft Day. And it's actually a movie that I would refer to because Steve and I think Sarah have an affinity for football. You guys might like this movie. It's actually pretty engaging. My wife thinks she would rather leave the room, but I watch it. I watch it all the way through. But there's a part in the movie, without giving it away, where there's a scout has been asked to dig up information on a prospect, a football prospect being drafted. And the scout comes back with a report and says, the team members were given a playbook and they were asked to read through the playbook. And I love this guy, the scout, because he's like me. He begs the guy to continue asking questions about it, and he's just getting very, very much throttled by, just tell me. And so what he says is, in essence, at the end of the playbook is a $100 bill. And so when he asked this prospect about reading the playbook, he never mentioned the $100 bill. And then when the prospect was told there was a $100 bill, he lied about it. And he said, oh, yeah. I remember. That was really, really good. Good joke. And what that did in some ways is it revealed his integrity orientation to the drafting professionals. Does that make sense? It's almost like, and I used to do this in certain classes, I would give an assignment to read and then complete. And they would read it, and if they read it through, the end said, don't do anything. Stand up and hand your paper in. But if they didn't read through the assignment, which was the first thing I would tell them to do, they would be sitting there for potentially as long as I let them sit there before I go, you didn't read that. So just to suggest to you, there are always tricks of the trade, sometimes as a facilitator. I try not to bring them in to our workshop, but they're sometimes in my mind swirling around. So there you go. So let me jump to the precipice of our next study. And surprisingly, this is really the gateway. We're going to go here anyway. So let me ask you this question. What does Jesus think about wedding receptions?
About what?
Wedding receptions.
Yep.
Wedding.
I thought you said writing.
No, he said wedding reception.
Wedding.
Does Jesus think about writing workshops?
I've never thought about that. Wedding reception.
Say that again, Gene.
I've never thought about that.
Absolutely you haven't. Although you should have, but you're right. Most of you, if you're being honest, I've never thought about that. So guess what? I want you to think about it now.
Okay. Thinking. They had to turn the fans on for the smoke.
Did they perform a miracle at one?
Absolutely he did. In fact, not only did he perform a miracle, he performed
The first one.
Right. My wife is here saying what you just said. The first one. What do you think about wedding receptions? Doesn't have to be Gene. Appreciate that. I can see some of you in the room thinking on something you've never been asked before in church. Good.
It reminds me of a song that's kind of become a bit of a popular one for me. done in Celtic by Celtic woman. And the title is Nilshin La, which means it's not they. And there's a line in it that actually you get in English that says, fill the glasses one more time and never heed the empty bottle. Turn the water into wine and turn the party up full throttle. And this is, I'm kind of thinking about it going, these are Irish women, likely raised Catholic. So I'm thinking that maybe Jesus liked parties. And when you think about a reception or a celebration, and we are even kind of burdened poor Dr. K with the whole thing about the Arbonne and the imagery that goes through Scripture, you know, I think Jesus wanted them to have a good time. He wanted to make certain that, I mean, he went, as well as some of the disciples did. I think he's not only in favor of them, but he thinks it should be a celebration.
What kind of celebration?
Okay. So again, I probably have to go back to that three-letter word that Sherry used. It's going to have to be one full of joy. And I encourage you, by the way, look up that video of Nishinla, particularly the one that's done in South Bend, Indiana, at the Moore's Entertainment Arts Center, because it's fun. And this, I would defy anybody to watch that and not end up tapping your foot or patting your hand or nodding your head. It's full of joy.
Anybody else want to weigh in on what Jesus think about wedding receptions? All right, so let me ask you this question. This is for you. And then I'll give you some background as to how we got here, but this is the gateway drug to help us with the next study. So
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Did you say gateway drug?
That's correct.
Okay. All right. Not the hemp, the marijuana. Gotcha.
What's the point? What's the point of a wedding reception?
It's to introduce and celebrate the bride and groom to everyone in their new whatever the word title. I don't even know what their new life together.
Yep.
Man, there's so much more than that. There's the commitment. There's a commencement. There's a covenant. Not meaning to be alliterative, but that's what happened. And there's a whole beginning of something new that is being celebrated. And now that I'm thinking about it more, I'm thinking that the marriage supper of the Lamb in Revelation is going to be a bit more raucous than I've envisioned it before.
Okay, please remember, you said that. I didn't say that yet. So remember, you said that, but I also appreciate you saying I hadn't thought about that before. This lends itself also to Diane and Liz's conversation about heaven.
Yeah.
Okay, because, and thank you for spanning this. We get to see Jesus in an earthly wedding reception, and he is the central figure in the marriage supper of, why don't we just put him in there, of Jesus.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so it spans the interval, and I'm asking you to think and conceive of something very likely you've not asked to be conceivers of. On purpose, I did that, Sarah. So please cross that out with red, but I did that on purpose.
The other thing that really kind of, and I'm just thinking about this as I'm speaking it, so forgive my lack of clarity. There's also a celebration of an ending of something. There's a celebration of the ending of the isolation of the two that are becoming one. There's a celebration of the ending of the searching having been, finding and having been found. There's a celebration of, so it's not just a commencement, kind of like, and we talk about a commencement when we talk about, high school graduation, college graduation. There's a commencement that they have, but it's like, wait a minute, why do we call it a commencement when it's a beginning? There's also an ending of the task of working towards that. So.
Right. Now, are you sure that all the stuff you said is not a dictionary definition, but that's what you believe?
Now you're talking about think with my heart instead of my head.
And that is the crux of why I'm stepping on people's heads today. I'm not asking. See, we're really good at giving, and we've got a more sophisticated Sunday school answer because I'm looking for a little bit more. I'm asking you, if you're talking about something, doth you believe in what you have said? You have said it.
Tough to say that in old King James, isn't it?
It's always tough to say on pretty much anything in King James.
Sure.
So, did you believe what you just said, or was that what gets you an A on the essay?
I think I understand whether or not, well, let me ask you this. When you say, do I believe it? Do I believe there's going to be a marriage supper of the Lamb? Do I believe that the Holy Spirit is our outer bone? Do I believe that there is going to be an ending and a beginning? Yes.
Okay. Right. Most churchgoers believe in the facts of stuff, but they have no concept of the feeling and the emotive connection to the stuff that you just said is plain and main in some regard. So I'm not asking you if you believe the facts of the Bible. I'm asking you if you believe the stuff of emotion that you just described with a commencement and an ending and the joining of two becoming one and not needing to search and the stuff you just said. By the way, I'm talking with Gene, but I'm actually addressing all of us. Do you believe what you just said?
Well, my problem is I have this ancestry that is fairly pilgrim-like, and I kind of divorced my feelings from my intellect. So feeling is not so important to me. There was a guy at Thomas Road Baptist Church who is always on crutches. He's always been in pain. And so I asked him, how you feeling today? And he said, I don't go on feelings. Feelings can be so fickle. So it's a fact. It's true. God said it. That settles it.
Okay, let me be quiet. Yes, Bruce.
So, Jim, you can't keep doubling down. But it just gets more and more academic as we go.
You're muffled. You're muffled, and you're probably making some amazing fun points.
Am I still muffled?
It's not very good audio right now, Bruce. We are holding.
How about now?
Better.
That is better.
Okay. I really interested. Now,
It went away. It's like it was good, then it wasn't. Where's your mic? How far down is it on you? Oh, there. Okay, I was just curious where it was. I'd
Maybe
smack you through the video if I could.
Is that any better?
No, it's really weird. It's like you've got
Cutting in and out.
yeah, it's cutting in and out. How do you have your WebEx to be focus on you or noise reduction or all voices? What do you have?
Oh, my. What should it be?
For
Just
you,
you.
I would say just you. Focus on you. The first, I think it's the first option in the radio options.
Is that? Is that?
Okay, try
Yes,
talking and let's see. Yep.
Is that better?
yes.
All right, we'll give it a shot. What's that? This is coming from. We're trying not to get this thing so heavy that it just doesn't connect to human life, right? I just go right there. No, no,
We're having. It's like it does not want to cooperate with you.
when he says one thing, how about now? It needs to go a little bit more so we can hear whether or not there's, it's actually going to keep with us.
Yeah, and I've muted us too to try to help with any background noise as well, Bruce, when you talking.
see, how about that one? Is that any better? Is that a better level? Is that
It
good?
comes and goes. It comes and goes.
All right, well,
Hey, Preston, can you mute yourself up there? You and Ellen? Can y'all mute?
is it not better?
Okay, try again, Bruce. Let's see what happens.
Now, does that make it better? Is that any better? How about now? Is that me? How's that? All right.
Give it a whirl, Bruce.
All right, I was telling you that. How does that sound? Is that any good? Yes or no?
It's still kind of garbled.
All right, I'm
Okay, well, you can always put it on Slack what you want to say.
Hey, I can see you, Bruce, chomping at the bit there. So yeah, if you can type it, go ahead and stick it in there so we can respond to it. Diane, I think you probably had a response.
No, I was just hoping when you muted, he would be more clear, but it didn't help.
So let me change because something that Gene said. Let me help to streamline this. Look, I often say that not the Pilgrims, but the folks who came afterwards sucked the fun out of worshiping Jesus, and they did. Listen, let's not mistake that, Gene, for what you just did describing yourself. The Pilgrims and those early settlers in the United States were very emotional. Were very in touch with their sentiment. They just curtailed the demonstrative stuff in regard to their worship and religion. They smoked hard, they drank hard, they ate celebratorily. They did not bring a lot of that aspect into their worship. And so they sucked all the joy out of the worship, but they lived pretty. Take a look at the Dutch brothers on the cigar box. These folks lived pretty fun lives for folks who had left kind of persecution and a country where they felt like it wasn't their own to come and create a new place where they could worship as they wanted to and then own and live how they desired. So they sucked the fun out of their faith, but they had tons of fun in other things. There's some other areas I could challenge offline we could discuss where they suck the fun out of some of that stuff too. But let's not believe that these were not expressive, emotional people. And when I say emotional, I don't mean that they weren't nutty crazy that way. But there were a lot of elements in their daily life that said that they enjoyed the gusto that was their new country.
Yeah, I kind of got
Yes,
something. Well, what Gene said is essentially, I mean, yes, God said it. If I'm following him, I got to believe it. Yes, I know that's true. But when you fall in love, you can't help but have feelings. You got to have emotions. And, there's things that since accepting Christ into my life that he's done for me, I can't help but be emotional about things like that. And am I a really emotional guy that shows it out there? No, but it's there inside. Yes.
Okay, I didn't pay you to say that, right, Jerry?
What's that?
I didn't pay you to say
Not
that.
Not yet.
Not yet.
And you initiated that answer on your own. Because look,
Yes.
maybe sometimes that's the imagery that we need to consider. Because I would challenge, if we were in a semantics class, that loving somebody and falling in love are actually, they should be the same thing. But I'm a guy who watches enough Love is Blind, Married at First Sight stuff to know our culture, including Christians today, believe that they're two distinctive things. Okay? But let's use the jargon that you came up with, Jerry, is loving somebody, right, which has a very simple definition, and I like that Pastor Bruce helped me understand this years ago, is wanting what's best for someone. But we also then believe that there's a falling in love, right? And the falling in love that Jerry's kind of describing is this. The fact is, yep, I love my kids. I love my dad. I love my brother. What Jerry just sort of suggested, though, and I would hope that it almost goes beyond just your spouse or your girlfriend. When you are, let me change this a little bit. When you are in love, right? Not that you just love. When you are in love with somebody, there is a demonstrative quality that attaches itself to your emotive nature. And I like that Jerry said this, and I didn't pay it. I know Jerry pretty much could take a lot of us with one hand tied behind his back. And when I think about a guy that is a guy of strength, it's Jerry. But when Jerry also says that there are things that I get very emotional about because I understand my attachment to it. Yeah, I get that. I get that, especially as an American male in a Western country where big boys don't cry. I get that. Except the truth is, big boys should cry when it makes sense to. And so there's a very big difference, Gene, from what you just said and from what you just explained, Jerry. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Because a lot of us, God said it. By the way, I believe it. Doesn't matter, right? God said it. I believe it. That's it. But if you never get in touch with the what God said and what you believe, then it's really not necessarily it. You're basically walking around with a textbook on your lap, going from class to class without ever going, I'm going to graduate. There's commencement exercises. I'm moving to the next phase. And being ready to get the heck out of grade school, middle school, high school, college, or even the job that you're in that prepares you for the next thing. And I would challenge that a lot of us have adopted Gene's mindset.
I agree, but I think a lot of that is because the church has become homogenized almost, like they're trying to attract the most people with diverse backgrounds. And I think they feel like if too much passion and feelings are involved, then people get hurt and run away. So we kind of package this whole thing that we don't tell people there's passion and joy in serving Christ. But we are afraid of the way that people take those things and mix them up. So it's almost better to be stoic about our faith.
Yes.
Or we're charismatic. You know, it's just like, it's this weird wash of stuff because it's filled with sin-filled people that we can't get the love that we're supposed to have, the agape love, and the passion that comes with that love would probably set us all on fire if we could get it.
All right, so we're over time, but I'm going to throw this question out because I think it's a good one to get some feedback on before we end today. So I'm going to ask it and I'll get some answers. By the way, I've heard already some of your answers to this question. So now that I'm asking it officially, I'm looking forward to what you said when it's asked directly. Ready? Why do you attend a wedding / a wedding reception? Why do you all attend a wedding / wedding reception?
Sometimes it's obligation. Sometimes it's because I want to go.
I appreciate that. In fact, I've heard some of you say, I'm going because I'm obligated to go. And I would challenge that that's the wrong reason to go to, watch this, watch what I'm going to say here. It's the wrong reason to go to the wedding reception. It's the wrong reason to go to the wedding reception. Can you follow what distinction I just meant? What distinction I just made and why I made that?
So you're saying it can be the right choice for the wedding, but not for the reception. Is that what you're saying?
Yes. Yes.
Because if the wedding reception is supposed to be a celebration, but you are obligated to go, you're not in the celebratory mood.
So what's the point again of the wedding celebration?
Oh,
Because you're right on it, Sarah. Well, you
again,
guys,
it's to show your support of them. You show that, you know, to meet the one new couple now, the whatever that happens to be. It's to celebrate their marriage, their new life together. But if you're not going because you wanted to go and you wanted to be there, you're not really sharing that commitment.
It's more personal. In the wedding, you just sit there and you watch, but in the reception, you are expected to interact with them, with the other people around them, and so yeah, personal. So if you're not into it, then you're not going to really be have a good time, or it's just not going to be the same. Not going to be the right thing.
Does that make any sense? Is that just wrong? Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so if everybody else is sitting around or dancing and celebrating and you're sitting like a lump on a log, then yeah, you're a joy kill.
Okay, you just used that word again, which is going to be the theme. Which is going to be the theme of our discussion as we gateway into our next study. Okay? Because listen, you're right. The wedding day in our culture has two components. By the way, in the Jewish antiquity, it was a 7-day process that actually began typically before the 7 days because of betrothal and because of families having preordained their joining. In our culture today, the wedding is the staid, stagnant, in many ways, predictable, thank you, Diane, event that many folks have to show up for. Do you understand? That
It should be a 3-pronged, well, actually 4-pronged. Wedding should include Jesus, the bride, the groom, and then everybody else is making a commitment to that couple to be there for them through their married life to make sure they're successful. And that's what we don't get. We see it as an obligation as a family. But if you don't, the couple's going to work, and that also puts you in a quandary.
It does.
So I get what you're saying.
Yes. And if you're not willing, when you go to the reception, to give it all up to the two parties who are the central figures, perhaps you shouldn't be there. Now, let me show you something that maybe you've read it before, but you didn't think about this before. If it wasn't Jean, somebody in that room, because my wife here was Jean. My wife here said, the wedding at Cana was Jesus's first miracle. John records it. Remember? Now, John typically doesn't put things in order. He puts them in order of divinity to show you Jesus' divinity. What does Jesus say when asked to participate in the way that he does in this wedding? What's he say?
My time has not come. What does that
Yes.
do?
Yes. Why does he say that? Why does he say that?
There's been debate on this, so I'm not going to engage in that right now. But it seemed like to me that there's a giving of himself that some might be expecting. It's not time yet. Then there's this whole wine and the Eucharist we talked about earlier. There's a whole bunch of stuff that's been debated on that. So I'm not sure.
He's essentially revealing himself, though.
Yes.
He's revealing. I mean, it's
Yes.
not like every day somebody says, "Oh, you need some wine? Let's take some water," and boom, here's some wine. That doesn't happen every day. So he's basically revealing who he is. And
Yes.
the good Jewish son is like, "Okay, Mom, I'll do this for you."
Yes, and I love watching that interaction between him and his mom. Because if we boil it down, you're right there, Steve, is Jesus pretty much operates completely and solely on the Holy Spirit telling him what to do next. Does that make sense? He allows himself to be led by the Holy Spirit as a model, among other things, for us. And so he says to his mom, "It's not yet my time." So then why does he do it? Why does he do it?
I can think of two possibilities. One is they needed the wine. And number two, Mama asked him to.
There's a bigger reason. Come on. I appreciate that look at it. There's a bigger reason, guys. And it's partly because we all have gone to weddings for years and we just don't think about the impact and its import and our contribution. So why does he do it? Yes, his mom asked him to. They need some wine. Couldn't they have just perhaps gotten more wine from some other place? And he didn't have to do what his mom asked him to do because she asked him not to die at one point in time, does she not? So why does he do it?
Well, there's no ABC store on the corner. But you have to think about it in terms of there's a whole bunch of cultural things with on the family that's providing, that's hosting the wedding, and in essence, and not preparing properly, running out of wine, what that does to the celebration of the wedding that's going on, what that does for them socially. I'm sure that weighed into him saying, "Okay, this is going to be. I'm revealing myself here, and maybe it's too early, and this is my contribution to the success of what we're celebrating." And basically, if I'm getting what you're saying, is this is his stamp of approval that this should continue. This needs to happen.
I don't know the two folks who are getting married because their names are not given to us. But we're given the environment of the wedding feast, wedding reception. And you're right on it, Steve. Jesus does what he does because he says, please, I'm paraphrasing, and this is in the Reading colloquial Bible. I'm the Christ. I'm here to redeem all of mankind for being enemies with you, Father. But in this moment, I'm not the most important player. In this moment, I'm not the most important player. The most important players are the central figures of why I'm here. And I need to give of myself and give to them because this matters. So that stamp of approval, yes. By the way, what were components of this Jewish feast? If you were going to describe it with maybe 3-4 words, what would you say?
Well, I mean, obviously, there's going to be food. There's going to be wine.
Yes,
There's
food.
going to be music and dancing, probably.
And food, drink, music, and
Well, Jerry said dancing.
dancing. By the way, which in many ways, and we're going to get here over the next couple of weeks, this is where the head stepping comes in. In many ways, these were devoid from your own wedding receptions. Thank you, Sherry. Appreciate that there. Now, this is not going to be an indictment necessarily on your wedding and your wedding reception, but I'm trying to show you that these 4 components were a part of the wedding that Jesus attended, and I would challenge that some of that, if not all of those, are going to be components of the marriage supper of Jesus. And the theme of the marriage supper of Jesus is, what was the word, Sherry?
Joy.
Joy. By the way, the wedding typically in antiquity, times of ancient times, I think it is a Jewish word that is Simcha. I think it's simcha. The definition of the word is joyous occasion. Joyous occasion. Here's why I say that to you, because we're going to delve into this a little bit more over the next week or two as we march into our next study. A lot of us have done and attended events, even if it was our own, out of obligation. And perhaps not only was there very little joy that was a component, there may be very little joy in reflection of it now and then looking forward from it. Does that make sense? Does everybody understand kind of what I just said? There may have been very little joy that was a part of your wedding reception, and very perhaps at this point, very little joy looking back toward it, and then looking ahead toward where it leads. And so let me break there. That's kind of where I'm going to end today. Your thoughts, your feedback. Bruce, you can test your mic out again, see if it's working. I'm sorry that we missed what you had to share there, because I was looking forward to it.
I don't know that necessarily that we'll get any of that though. Even let's say you go to a wedding and there's music and there's dancing and there are people that are out there and they're getting inebriated.
Yeah.
I don't think that it has anything to do with joy or celebrating the couple itself that's getting married. I think that people are just having fun. And I don't think those are necessarily the same thing.
So what you're presenting is that sometimes we mispresent what our modern day wedding celebrations are about, and you're right about that. But I can't say that the folks at the wedding at Cana weren't getting blotto as well, right? What I can say is, in our Western Christian society, drinking is something that we frown upon. Jesus made not only Riuniti, but he made top-notch Napa or French wine, and folks were going, this is the Billy Bob.
That's right, because they even commented that, unlike other places, usually they have the best in the beginning, and then as the time goes on, they bring out the cheaper stuff because people are already inebriated. But
Correct.
In this case, it was the other way around. They complimented them because that they saved the best for later. Am I right?
Thank you, Sharon. Your point's not wrong. my challenge is going to be that maybe we've done wedding receptions, if not the wedding ceremony, all wrong. And so when we reflect on the truth of our marriages and the celebrations, they are facts that we're not emotionally attached to. I'll challenge that over the next several weeks as we step into our new study. But like Brother Gene said, God said it, I believe it, that's it. And I know that this discussion would seem to be outside the participation of folks who aren't married, except I would like to think that in today's world, even with the gender dysphoria, the LGBT stuff, folks in some interesting way have a desire, if not to be married, to couple together. And so everybody can participate in this discussion, because what we're going to talk about in some regard as we join this together is we have been doing perhaps weddings, but mostly the wedding reception incorrectly. And what it lacks is Sherry's three-letter word. The emphasis, in some ways, Steve, is on getting people blessed, as opposed to having a spirit of joy and laying it all down for the central figures. Yes, Brother Gene?
Point of clarification. I said, God said it, that settles it. I did not say that my believing it settled it.
So I'll remove that from your history, except that's usually what the T-shirt says. To validate that I'm good with what God said.
Okay.
So you did not say that, but the bumper sticker, the T-shirt, and the buttons all typically do.
And the song. There was an old song too.
You're right. Other thoughts as we close out? Thank you, by the way.
Thank you, by the way, for playing straight into your hand. Right.
My only thought is we sometimes also invite people out of obligation. So because they're our family, or they're our father's friends or our mother's friends, just thinking about, we've messed that up. We surely have messed up things in the church as well out of obligation.
Okay. So Diane, since you did that, let me give you your two opening questions for next week. Since you just said that, here are your two questions to begin with for next week. Number one, were you personally, now, let me ask this differently. What were the elements of you that made you happy? Question one, what were the elements of your wedding reception that made you happy? If you're not yet married, if you are anticipating coupling and being married, but you're dating, what are the elements of a wedding reception that will make you happy? And then the second question is, what were or what will be the elements of your wedding reception that are joyous, that will be joyous? Those are your two questions that we're going to start with for next week. If you need to open your dictionary, then tackle that to be able to answer those two questions.
Let me make certain I understand the distinction that you used. What made us happy and what or will make us happy, and what made us or will make us joyous.
That's correct.
Two very distinct questions.
I think so.
Okay.
All right. That's the opening salvo for next week.